Hey, what's up, tubers? It's Tony, and today we're going to talk about how to replace the thermostat on an '07 Chevy Silverado 1500 Classic. This is the 4.3-liter vortec engine. There is the part number for the thermostat that I got from AutoZone. You don't necessarily need to purchase this particular part number. You can purchase whatever part number your vehicle calls for, okay? We're going to talk a little bit about the coolant temp sensor in this vehicle. There is the part number, which comes with its own new electrical connector. In the event that yours is damaged, again, you don't need to purchase this particular part number, but I'll leave that up to you. After watching today's video, only you will be able to determine if today's video is specific to your particular year, make, and model Chevy Silverado, okay? Right quick, guys. For about a year now, I've known that the coolant temp sensor's electrical connector was bad on this truck. Too lazy to go out and actually fix it. Every now and then it would get pulled out. I may be working on something else and inadvertently pull it out and forget to put it back in because it's down below. And then I would get check engine code P0117 or P0118 or something of that nature. Okay, I would then just reach down, plug it back in, and reset the check engine light, and I would be good to go. But apparently this thing was really getting bad. The other day I was driving home and I stopped to gas up, and when I went to start the truck up, it was extremely difficult to start the vehicle up. So I always keep a scan tool with me. I scanned it and saw that I had check engine code P0117. I knew it was this stupid electrical connector, so I went down there and fiddled with it, moved it around a couple times, and eventually must have got a connection because the truck then started up and it ran fine. So when you have a bad coolant temp sensor or check engine code P0117, 118, 115, something of that nature, it will produce hard starts, okay? So after I got the vehicle home, I eventually went to AutoZone and purchased a new coolant temp sensor. It came with its own electrical connector. As you see, for about a year now, I've already had an electrical connector that I should have wired up a long time ago, but just too lazy, guys. But since the new temp sensor came with its own electrical connector, I went ahead and wired that up, okay? So what also was happening when I had P0117 is the fans were running really, really high after that, okay? So when I got home, put the new coolant sensor in, and when you turn the new coolant sensor in, guys, you just want to turn it in until this orange stuff disappears. You don't have to put anti-seize or anything on these threads because anti-seize will not seal it. It will just make it easier for the coolant temp sensor to come out the next time you need to remove it. You don't have to put tape around it, but you can put tape around it. I'll leave that up to you. Now, you want to make sure the engine is completely cold before you fool with the temp sensor or the thermostat. And guys, there are different ways of doing things. It doesn't matter what way you do it as long as you accomplish the job safely and successfully, okay? A lot of people like to write and tell others, well, I wouldn't do it this way, I wouldn't do it that way. Unless you see that someone's doing something extremely dangerous, then give your comment. Other than that, they're doing it the best way that they know how, okay? Some people are visual learners and need to see everything. So I want some of you folks out there that are watching videos to remember that everyone is not you. Some people have to physically watch someone do something step by step because that's how they learn. And that's not going to change because you're impatient or whatever, okay? So anyway, there are several ways you can replace the coolant temp sensor. Some people will take the bottom hose, and don't worry, I'll show you that. Break it free, drain all of the antifreeze out of the vehicle. That's the way I usually do it. Some people will just wait till the engine is cold, disconnect the electrical connector, turn out the old coolant temp sensor, have a catch can down below. You're going to get about 4 cups of coolant that will come out into your catch can if you do it that way, and then they'll just go ahead and screw the new sensor in. But I'll leave that up to you as to how you want to do it. Now you know you have options, okay? Again, the best way is to just go ahead and drain the coolant and then put in your new sensor and then top the coolant off in the end, okay? So I'll show you where the coolant temp sensor is and the new electrical connector that I put in. This is really easy, guys, and I think you need a, what size socket? A 3/4 inch socket. Hold tight. Yes, I just wanted to verify that for you. You need a 3/4 inch socket to remove the coolant temp sensor, okay? So remember, lefty-loosey, righty-tighty, okay, to get the coolant temperature sensor out and in, right? So eventually, when this coolant temp sensor went bad, there was all kinds of goop down in there, guys, and this thing broke off, melted, whatever, and probably was also causing the coolant temp sensor not to work correctly. So anyway, I had the fans running really high after I got the vehicle started at the gas station. When I got home, I started the vehicle up, cut it off, started it up again. The fans were still running kind of high for a moment. Even after replacing the coolant temp sensor with a new one, the fans started running high again. I rode around my neighborhood hoping that it would reset itself because I had already reset the check engine light. The fans continued to run high. So I started to investigate to see why the fans would be running high. I brought the vehicle back home, and while it was running, I went to grab the upper radiator hose that runs from the radiator to the thermostat, and it was extremely cold, guys, which told me that the thermostat was jammed shut, not allowing the hot coolant in the engine to go through the radiator hose into the radiator where it can be cooled off. That's why the fans were kicking in, trying to keep the engine cool, because that hot antifreeze needs to come out of the engine and go into the radiator so that cool antifreeze can go into the engine, and then the process is just repeated over and over and over. Your thermostat opens, your thermostat closes. When the temperature reaches a certain temperature in your engine, the thermostat opens, releases that hot coolant into the radiator. At the same time, another door is opening, releasing cool antifreeze into the engine. And again, the process just repeats itself over and over and over and over. Okay, to replace the thermostat, guys, there are a number of different ways you can do this, guys. And again, there is no wrong or right. As long as you do the job successfully and safely, I don't really care. And most people out there shouldn't be writing you and telling you this and that and the other thing as well. If they know how to do it, then go for it. A ratchet, 3/8 ratchet, 13 millimeter deep socket, swivel, and a short driver. For those of you that are not familiar with box wrenches, these box wrenches you can find at Harbor Freight. They come in extremely handy. It has like 12 on one side, 13 on the other. Flat blade screwdriver is what I'm going to use today, and one of these little hooks to kind of grab the head of the old thermostat and pop it free. Now, just take a look at your thermostat and the way it's sitting in there when you remove it. No wrong, no right. Just put the new thermostat in just like the old one was in there, and then you can go ahead and screw everything down. So I'm going to run out to the truck, guys, right quick, and then we're going to remove the old thermostat. And again, you can go about whatever way you want to get to the thermostat housing to remove it. There is no wrong or right. Okay, folks, for a little bit more room to get to that back thermostat stud back there, I go ahead and break this free. Flat blade screwdriver, remove this portion of the air box out of your way. The next thing I do is pull this rubber hose back there free, break loose this wing nut right here. And then you can go ahead and pull this out of the way, guys. Gives you a little bit more room to get to that screw back there. Now, when you break these two 13 millimeter studs loose, you're going to have a little bit of antifreeze that comes loose. If you decide that you want to drain the coolant when you are replacing the coolant temp sensor, just unbuckle that puppy there and your antifreeze will come out once you wiggle that hose off of the water pump. You could break this clamp free here, coolant will come out of it. You could break that clamp free there, coolant will come out of it, but that's in a nasty spot. So I typically just break this free here and then raise the hose up out of my way. Again, for those of you who are not used to box wrenches, that's what they do. They come in extremely handy and allow you to get into some really weird places at times. I could have just as easily removed all of this stuff, guys, but remember I told you whatever way works for you is fine. There is no wrong or right when it comes to this. Back there in the corner, I use a 13mm socket, swivel, and short driver to break that free. So that's what I do back here in the corner, guys. Again, you can make this job easy and simple with a little bit of time invested, or you can do things the hard way. I'll leave it up to you. Now, as I stated, you're going to get a little bit of coolant sometimes that will come out of these housings when you break them free. There is none in this case, okay? There's the thermostat right there. All you have to do is break that free. Now, unfortunately, you're going to need to clean the rim of the thermostat housing up. Make sure that it is completely clean before you put your new thermostat down, okay? So guys, when you go to remove the old thermostat, you want to take a razor blade. Make sure you clean the surface of the thermostat housing right there as best you can. Okay, I want to make sure that it's completely clean. Make sure that this surface here is clean as well. Some people will use additional sealant along with a gasket. So if you notice that there's sealant and a gasket, you want to make sure you remove any old gasket and sealant that's sitting on that rim, okay? Okay, folks, remember I told you that there are a number of different ways you can do this, as well as putting the thermostat down there, hold tight, as well as putting the new thermostat in with its own gasket. I will put a dab of water pump thermostat gasket maker around the seal, just a dab, don't go overboard, and that for me definitely assures me that I will get no leaks. You don't have to do this, I'll leave this up to you. Remember, there is no radiator cap on these trucks, so when you tighten that puppy down, make sure it's nice and tight, but don't go overboard. You want to replenish any antifreeze that you lost when you broke that free, and then you want to make sure that the antifreeze level is up to the correct level. So fill it up, don't put the cap back on, start the truck and let the truck run for about 10 minutes. What you're doing is making sure that any bubbles trapped in the system will flow to the top, and after about 10 minutes you can go ahead and put the cap back on, make sure that it's nice and tight, take the vehicle for a test drive, and check the temperature gauge to make sure that it's working correctly, because oftentimes one of the biggest signs too that you're having a problem with your thermostat is not just grabbing this hose and it's cold, is you will notice that on the temperature gauge it's barely to the halfway mark on the cluster board, so you definitely want to check that as well. Okay folks, just so you see, that's what I do. I put a dab of gasket maker around that rim just to assure myself that I will not have a coolant leak. Okay, again, you could take all this stuff back there apart and remove this bracket to gain better access to that. Whatever way you want to do it, guys, there is no wrong or right to it, okay? Again, remember, These vortec engines, the radiator does not have a radiator cap, so you must replenish your antifreeze by putting it into this overfill section right here. Top it off to the correct level. Again, start the truck up, let it run for about 10 minutes with the cap off. You are making sure that any bubbles that are trapped in the system flow to the top. Okay, be careful not to get burnt. And then just make sure that everything is hooked back up before you are done. Make sure your bolts are nice and tight back there. If you took this off, make sure that's what you really don't need to do. Make sure that clamp is back on. If you decided to remove this, again, whatever way you want to do it. If you drained the antifreeze because you replaced the coolant temp sensor, make sure you put this puppy back on nice and tight, okay? Now you can go ahead and put everything back together, guys. Again, I don't have any extra antifreeze, so that's a trip to Walmart for me later. Again, once you're done here, I usually will let this dry for about an hour or so. Okay? Put your clamp back in, Make sure you hook that hose back up. Replenish your antifreeze. Now, my new coolant temp sensor is that sensor right there. It's located on the driver's side. There's your brake reservoir, and then you just come in down there near the spark plug wires down below, and you'll find your new coolant temp sensor. Remember, lefty loosey, righty tighty, guys. The electrical connector there, you just pull the little tab up and pull the electrical connector away from the sensor. Just that easy, folks. Again, you want to make sure the engine is completely cool before you either replace the coolant temp sensor or replace the thermostat, okay? And again, remember, there is no wrong or right to how you do the job as long as you do it safely and correctly, guys. So I hope today's video has been helpful for those of you who are new to this game. Thanks for watching. Take care.